Welcome, guys, to the first episode of Level X, the podcast. My name is David.
My name's Jesus.
And if this is your first time listening, we're basically going to give you a quick rundown as to who we are and what this podcast is going to consist of. And then if you are not a first time listener, I bet you guys are wondering, what the hell is this, David? And I know
That's what I'm wondering, man.
because there's been
You
multiple.
invited me here, and
There's
I have no idea. You
there's
blindfolded me, so I actually don't even know where I am.
because there's been multiple ventures that we have done here on YouTube. And you can find us if you're listening to this on SoundCloud. You can find us on iTunes as well as YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, you can find us on SoundCloud and iTunes,
Right.
and vice versa. But basically, a quick rundown. This is going to be our new venture. We are brothers. We're brothers.
We are brothers. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
basically, we started a YouTube channel a couple years back when I was right out of high school. I was like 18 at the time,
Tell
I
them
believe.
what the name of the YouTube was.
The YouTube channel name was DVXSR, and it was basically a news channel as to where I was. It was a weekly show basically, and I was at the time, I was at the time just reviewing or talking about things that I was interested at the time, like sneakers, clothing, just anything pop culture-ish.
Yeah.
So then after that, I brought in my brother, and he was talking about,
Just film, comics, toys, just kind of like nerdy stuff like that I was into at the time. Right out of high school, also.
yeah, so it was a wide variety, from clothing to just anything that basically teenagers
Yeah,
and young
mostly,
adults
yeah,
would be
youth.
into. And then after that, as you start growing up, your likes and just things that you're into change. So that's kind of what happened. And at the time, we were still recording videos, but my mindset and my passion wasn't on creating that type of
Right.
content any longer. Every time we were supposed to film, I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it almost became like a chore where well, I know me personally, I was kind of forcing myself to get in front of the camera and just summarize articles because, like David said, that's what we were doing. We were basically a news channel, just looking up articles and giving this information to our viewers. But like I said, after a while, it just became something that I was forcing myself to do, and you could even see it in the videos. I was like, it was contrived, and you can see that I was forcing the effort, and I don't know, after a while it just became kind of tiring.
Yeah, exactly. And it was not only tiring, but not when creating a YouTube channel as well as to like running a YouTube channel. There's a lot of aspects that go alongside just creating the content. There's also like the marketing and also trying to get more viewers. And we were actually having, I would say like quite a success compared to when we first started.
Yeah,
We were closing in at 1,000 subscribers already. We were getting,
our views were skyrocketing.
yeah, our views were
In the
skyrocketing.
thousands. It was cool.
Yeah, so we weren't necessarily like $1 million subscriber,
A million
yeah,
subscriber.
channel,
Yeah.
but we were definitely, we had our little fan base. But besides that, man, like sometimes, regardless of if you're having success or not, if your mindset isn't where it's at or what
It
you're
should be.
creating, you're never gonna have fully success or fulfill any type of real success there. So then after that, in the meantime, while we were creating those that content, those YouTube videos, we are based out of Arizona, so we were actually creating local events here with local artists. From musicians to painters
Yeah.
to graphic designers. So just a bunch of artists. So we were actually creating local events. So we were doing that for a while as well.
Yeah, for like basically since like last spring, summerish, going into the summer, we were doing that. At the same time, we were also just working on ourselves. Like if any of you are familiar with the phrase like self improvement, that's kind of what we were doing. We were reading, we were hitting the gym, kind of just trying to increase our knowledge and just basically try to get to our ultimate selves, to um, our best selves. And that's kind of how this podcast came to be. If you want to explain to them a little bit about what this podcast will entail, David.
Definitely. Now for the last 2 months, also, we actually began our online businesses. So mind you, I am 21 at the moment.
Yeah, I'm 20.
So mind you, we are like barely hitting our adulthood. So basically, we started our online businesses. So we're still trying to grow those and trying to learn the side of that, that business side of things. But basically, what this podcast is basically going to be towards, I would say, high schoolers as well as young adults,
Yeah.
more specifically males. And basically, it's going to be like our trials and tribulations. We're going to
Yeah.
be documenting how we're growing. So we're going to be talking and discussing the books that we're reading at the time. We're also going to be talking about reviews of different types of products, not necessarily like clothes or anything, but maybe we're going to be talking about like business programs that we invest to, or like
Mm-hmm.
psychology courses, or any type of different courses that deal either with business, psychology, or any type of like self-development.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about seduction. Now this field, this is gonna be our new type of field. So we're always going out and about and learning how to speak to women, going out on dates or whatever.
Yeah.
Just different social dynamics.
Situation.
Yeah, social dynamics or social situations we're putting ourselves in. And basically, this is going to be a way for us to get out of our comfort zone, but also spread our knowledge. So this is going to be a place where we spread our knowledge on all different types of areas that we're trying to improve ourselves in.
And then at the end, also just, sprinkle in just kind of entertainment-y stuff that we find interesting, just because we're all trying to bring it back to what kind of our viewpoints and how we see the world. There's social media, but there's also just like the news, and it's just a crazy, crazy world out there. So we're just trying to also just give some entertainment, so you guys won't get too bored if you're just trying to have like a good time. Like if you're listening to this in the car and you're just trying to smile or something like that.
Exactly. And then also, besides that, we're also going to be talking about different Arizona spots. So if you are listening and you are from Arizona, we're going to be talking about the places that we like to visit, as well as to any type of things that we have done over the weekend. So if you are trying to, or even trying to visit Arizona, any spot, you can know of any spots you want to potentially go to. So just a wide variety of things, but like I said, it's basically geared towards more either kids in high school or young adults. Just either if you're trying to learn how to start your own business, or any type of books to get you started on your own journey to self development, or even you need just more types of inspirational things to listen to. This is your podcast. Now, our first episode will be consisting of, as well as to, I know what you're wondering, why level X. Uh, so do you have anything to say?
Um, well, first of all, the name just sounded cool, but it's basically it came from this video that you saw, which talks about.
Well, it's not necessarily a video, but I am reading a book
Yeah.
by Ken Wilber. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. But no, it's basically about psychological development.
Yeah.
And it's talking about basically by Claire Graves and then some other psychologists, and they basically, it's called like spiral dynamics, and basically it's saying that every human being goes through like specific levels or waves eventually throughout their lives, and then they reach like the end point or the end wave, but it still continues. So basically, the way I see this podcast is like level X meaning,
It's a variable.
yeah, it's like a variable. So everyone is going to be at different levels, but nonetheless, they're still part of the journey. So why not call it level X as to, okay, well, we're at this level, but you guys could be at a different level. So just
Continuous improvement, basically, and that's also another reason why we did this podcast, is because we're also learning. We're continuous learners, and I encourage everyone to be a continuous learner. Always seek further improvement. And by doing this podcast, we're not only teaching you guys, but we're in a way teaching ourselves, because we're just kind of refreshing ourselves on books we read, on books we're reading, and just kind of soaking all that information in and being able to teach it to you guys helps us better understand it ourselves. Helps us to better understand it ourselves.
Okay.
So it's just all about becoming a better you.
Okay, and then for you, just what do you want this podcast to do to our viewers or to our listeners?
To our listeners, I don't know. I just wanted to inspire you to read more, to become basically a well-rounded person. I know me, when I was a little younger, like even just 2 years ago, I wasn't as knowledgeable. I wasn't as aware of the world as I am today, and that all just came from putting myself in new situations, and I guess uncomfortable situations, and that's how I grew. I mean, I'm not to say that I'm like some great person right now, but I'm definitely better than I was like 2 years ago, and that's just came from wanting to learn more, and it came from watching other people do it. Also, they inspired me, and I hope that this podcast can inspire some of you younger viewers to just read, but also to want to do stuff.
Exactly. And then that kind of it reminds me of when we first started or whatever. When we first started like YouTube.
Yeah.
When I first started and I was creating content, I was at a point when I was first creating that every single video that I was creating, I was like comparing it to people that were already on YouTube for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of brings you down and like kills your self-esteem a whole lot, even if it might not affect you a lot. It still affects you nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think it's key that you brought up. And I think it's key that you brought up. You know, you're just comparing yourself to how you used to be like 2 years ago. I think that's important when you're actually starting out on this journey of becoming a better person. Is that there's always going to be someone stronger than you or bigger than you, or more good looking than you. There's always going to be somebody that has more than you. But I think the important thing, and always to keep in the back of your mind, is to stop comparing yourself to other people, but just compare yourself to who you previously were.
Yeah.
That way you never lose.
That's life. Perfect, man. That's a perfect example. I guess now I don't know, that was awesome. I like that. Good job, man. Good job. But basically, just to get right into the podcast, since we don't want to make this too long, since we consider this kind of just an introduction. Is there anything you want to talk about today, David? Anything you want to inform our viewers about?
Nah, I say just hopefully this is gonna be something that you guys definitely enjoy. If you're on YouTube or even on SoundCloud, comment down below, or even hit us up. All the links are gonna be down below. We're gonna be starting a Twitter as well. So if you guys are on Twitter, definitely gonna follow us there. Also email us any of your questions. Hopefully in the future we will be answering your questions. Besides that, anything else?
Well, if you guys don't know, if you guys don't even care about descriptions, our email is levelxpodcast@gmail.com. Level X is spelled LVL, so an abbreviation, LVLX podcast@gmail.com. Other than that, follow us on our Instagram. It's not necessarily specifically for this podcast, but it is just basically stuff that we care about. So if you want to stay informed on what's going on in the daily world, follow us at Vincent Studios, VNCT Studios, on Instagram to stay informed on anything pop culture related. And basically that's it. If you're listening and you listen throughout these entire, what are we, like 15 minutes in, thank you so much. Look forward to more content that we have in store every week. We still haven't decided on a day, but definitely every week check back on SoundCloud, iTunes, or YouTube.
Yeah, and then so next week you should definitely have a full length podcast episode
How
ready
long
for
are we
you guys.
trying to make them, David?
I mean, I'm just gonna say about 40 to an hour long, depending on how we're feeling at the day, or if there's anything dope. But in all seriousness, it's gonna be a really fun experience, just being able to describe what we're doing or what we've been doing what we're actually working on as well.
Yeah.
So just a wide variety of things, and it also gives us more motivation, to go out there and actually implement this knowledge, so we can give that to you guys. Because I think a lot of and this is before we leave. My book was actually talking about this, how a lot of the times, a lot of knowledge or a lot of people talk about um, how do I explain it? Basically, they use the analogy when they're talking about like some type of knowledge or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
About, let's just say you're trying to go to Hawaii, right? Well, a lot of people, instead of actually going to Hawaii and experiencing it, they just kind of look at a map or they look at pictures and they try describing Hawaii through a map or through a pictures as if it was an actual experience. Wherein basically, I think what it's saying is, instead of just soaking in the knowledge, you got to use that knowledge and actually implement that knowledge.
Right.
So I think
yeah.
this is kind of like our catalyst, so we can go out there and implement all the knowledge that we're learning, and then giving it to you guys to give you guys insight as to personal insight as to what works, what doesn't, well, for us.
Yeah, pretty much we're just doing it so we can pressure ourselves to go out and do stuff. Because otherwise, I mean, we're just gonna look like little jerks right here to saying that we're this stuff and then not even doing it ourselves. We don't want to be those guys. Because I know David is that kind of guy, but I'm not, guys.
Exactly.
You guys can trust me. But regardless, thank you so much for listening. Check us back next week. We love you. Well, not yet, but we'll become cool eventually. Later, guys.
Peace.